Hi guys, it's Colleen, and I am here with Alan Brokken.
Brocken is right. Rockin'
Okay,
Brocken.
woohoo. I was gonna say I at least remembered your name. Everybody else's I forgot their name like when I come to that part. So we're doing good today.
Yeah, great. Glad to be
Thank
here.
you for coming and or meeting, whatever this is called, and going over a few things. So to start out with, who are you? Who is your family? And why did you start homeschooling?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Alan Brocken. I'm a homeschool dad with three kids in college. So you can successfully homeschool children from, like kindergarten through college and get them there and they'll get in and all that. So we we started our homeschool journey just because of work, to be honest. Like we had some sort of social issues at school that were bad, but that needed to be dealt with. But even that we might have been able to do with transferring schools or whatever. But I was a consultant traveling 4 days a week for work, and it was just too hard to deal with. Oh, now I've got a week off or 2 weeks off. Let's go do something, family. And that didn't work with public school. Like they did not like that idea. So, and it really came to a head. I had a really tough engagement with a customer where I was there for 10 days straight. Like, and it was all hours kind of, we did a big deployment, pretty exhausting. And then I just had a week off, like right after that. And I missed the kids' actual spring break. And we couldn't come up with any alternate arrangements because the standardized testing was the during the week that I had off, and it was just like not allowed to do anything different than that. So we started homeschooling, and the first semester we actually it was sort of like what I'd call state homeschooling, in that the state of Missouri at the time had a homeschool program. Like they would send you curriculum, and you had tutors, and it was actually kind of like really cool and innovative. And then budget cuts came along, and the like state school people said no, we don't want people homeschooling, so they shut the whole thing down, which left my wife in a lurch. Like, imagine this. You've got your whole curriculum planned. You know what you're doing. It's been handed to you. You've got your boxes of stuff. And then literally 3 weeks before the next semester starts, somebody says, oh, you've got to throw that all out. You can't use any of it. You got to start over.
I
So
was
she had
gonna
to
say, yeah,
figure
I
out her
can.
curriculum. She had to figure out her curriculum. She had a 3 week window to figure out, okay, what am I going to do now? Because I don't have any of the stuff provided. Because everything they sent kind of a semester at a time. So she figured it out. She's a superhero, as far as I'm concerned, from homeschooling perspective. My wife, Janet. Then when we moved to Illinois, she actually helped set up the Wellspring Co-op in Bloomington. So the Wellspring community, she was the leader of that for many years, and to our I don't know the surprise, but I think it's a credit to the leadership she had that it's still operating. Like she's retired. We're now say post homeschooling, but we're just taking our lessons learned and sharing them back to the community.
I was gonna say, yeah, that like you said, the traveling, that is one thing. My husband's an over the road truck driver, so like he gets home depending on what his run is. Sometimes it would be like you said, where he would be gone for a week and then come home for a few days. And like you said, you can't just pull them out of school. It doesn't work that way. They won't
Mm-mm.
let you. And he's like, I'm missing, you know what I mean? That is one nice thing is he still works as a truck driver, which leaves me to stay home and I babysit. But when he comes home early, like we can go do stuff. We can,
Right.
all the kids that I babysit, they all go with us and we go hiking and we go, you know what I mean, grocery shopping, but we do it
Mhm.
as a family. It's not just, oh, well, dad's home so he can watch everybody and I can run to the store.
Yeah.
It becomes a whole family thing. So I definitely get that. And I definitely feel for your wife because I know how that feels too. And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, that did not work. What are
Right.
we going to do now?
Exactly.
So no, I'm glad. So, and you kind of touched on basically now you're just sharing what you know and what you've learned back.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why you do conventions and teach and stuff. And then
Yep.
you're also an author, correct?
Yeah. So while I was traveling, so like your husband, I'm gone many days a week, hard to connect with the kids, and in my case, I was a consultant, and so a typical day I'd leave home at say 4 a.m. to get to the airport to fly somewhere, and about 1 o'clock I'd be engaged with customers, and typically when you're a consultant, the only person that wants you there is the boss. Like nobody else wants you there. It's a really combative environment where especially like the first 2 weeks of working with a customer, they spend the whole time just trying to show you're an idiot. I mean,
Right.
and so it's just rough. I mean, rough travel, and so it'd be 8, 9 o'clock at night before I finally got settled enough I could call home and check in with the family. And I'd call home and my kids would be excited and they'd be like, "Hey, Daddy, what'd you do today? Are
Yep.
you feeling that uncomfortable silence?" That's what it was like. I didn't have any words. I mean, I'd used up all of my vocabulary for the day or whatever. And it was tough. I mean, it was brutal for
Well,
me
and
personally.
explaining to kids what you're doing, you know what I mean? Well, I just dealt with people that don't really want to deal with daddy and don't, you know what I mean? That's not a great
Yeah.
conversation because my husband,
No, and even if they weren't terribly interested at the age of 5 in RSA 2048 bit encryption. Like that
right,
wasn't going to be a
exactly. That was kind
wasn't
of
a conversation we're going to have. And so after a few weeks of that, uh one night my son, he's talking about a stuffed animal, Sparkle Frog, and he says something about the stuffed animal, and then I said, "And then what happened?" And so then he told me a story, and I kept saying, "And then what happened?" So I went from like 0 words to 4 words, and that was quite the improvement. And I was feeling pretty proud of myself because, hey, I can communicate with my children now. I was feeling good about it. And then like only a week later, one night, then he's like, "No, Daddy, you tell me what happened." And so now I'm stuck because I only have 4 words, and he says those don't work anymore. So I started getting up in the morning, and I was doing devotions at the time, and this was like really deep stuff. It was like A.W. Tozer, and like the book I was reading through, I tried to read through 6 or 7 times, and it was just hard. It was very deep theological stuff, but I was learning stuff, and I was like, how can I share this with my kids in an age appropriate way? Because obviously, if it's hard for me to get through, you know, whatnot, but there was a lot of the Holy Spirit in that book. The book was Experiencing God, and I was like, how can I share that with my kids in a way they'll kind of get it, that it might go through. And so I started taking this idea that they wanted to hear a story, and I started just putting stuff together. I threw in a little bit of Sparkle Frog, a little bit of Meow Meow, stuffed cat, and stuff like that. And anyway, that's turned into a story, and the kids had a lot of opinions about what should be in there. But throughout, I try to sprinkle, sort of spiritual truth. The idea that, when in doubt, you want to go back to the good book because that's the right thing to do. It's got discernment for you in it, and so that's where the first book in my series came from. And then over time that expanded, and now there's 6, and that series is complete. And I've got some language arts curriculum, multimedia, because my kids had a tough time reading, so we've got audiobooks that go with it, and like audiobook players. So we've got like a whole system to help learners of different abilities learn.
very cool. Yeah, I was gonna say, getting my kids to read, they love to read, but it has to be what they want to read about. And
Hmm.
like you said, if you're able to sprinkle that in there and make it fun for them to learn, that makes everybody happy, parents as well as the children. So,
Oh yeah, no, and I think the other thing we're just like overall in America, we are suffering from a literacy crisis.
mhm.
Like if you look at the stats, kids aged, if your child is 3rd to 8th grade and you're in public school or you just got out of public school, 70% of kids are behind level.
Yep.
And I think, as sort of how my faith gets lived out in this stuff, I believe that practical literacy is the gateway to biblical literacy. Like you can't read the Bible if you can't read. So I'm
Well,
very, very adamant about trying to help families build that basic skill so that they can be taught God's word.
and yes, like you said, if you can't read and understand a basic book, reading the Bible is definitely going to throw you for a loop, and then you're not going to want to do it, which is definitely not a good thing either. Because no, my nieces and nephews, I had one of my nephews was in, I want to say 3rd grade, and he came over and was like, "Auntie, I can't read." And I said, "No, you can. You just have to slow down." But finding him a book, he didn't want to read what they were giving him at school.
Right.
And I'm like, "Well, nobody wants to read this. Like, no offense, but I don't want to read it. And I'm an
Yeah.
adult and can read."
Mhm.
So we went to the library, and I mean, like, I sat there for hours going through trying to find books that he would read. And when we finally found him something that he was interested in, lo and behold, he can read. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But nobody was taking any time to do that at school.
Right.
And my son was the same way.
Mhm.
He was above reading, like his level, but not, again, what they were giving him at school to read was not interesting to him, so he just wouldn't read it.
Right.
Well, my daughter is the same way. Like, my daughter's way above too, which is great. But again, if they're not going to read, it doesn't matter whether they can read at that level if they're not actually doing it. So no, I think that's very true because yeah, and then you try to go read the Bible and they're like, well, this is way harder than, because of the way it's written for most people, it is hard to read. I mean, I'll agree even now. There are things that I've reread, you know what I mean, the same
Mhm.
text 20 different times because I'm like, wait a minute, I'm still not catching, you know what I mean, what is there to grab. So I think it's great.
Well, and not to go completely off script here, but I'm super passionate about this. Like helping kids read God's word is my number one thing. And if they build reading skills with my books, that's great. Whatever, that's cool. But I want them to be able to read the Bible. So I'm super excited. This just happened 2 weeks ago at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. I have a partnership with the Good and Evil Ultimate Action Bible company, the people that put out this comic book Bible, that I have audiobook players that go with it. So you can read and listen at the same time. And I'm just really excited about that because that is, it's not your ESV, your KJV or something like that, but it is the Bible. It is the stories of the Bible written
Right.
at a grade level that you can build that skill and become familiar with those stories such that when you get to that higher grade level, you can actually read the Bible and understand it as it is. And so I'm very excited about that partnership and the fact that I was able to put it together because in the end, like I said, if you're not practically literate, you're not going to be biblically literate.
Well, and that sounds, I mean, like a comic book gets a lot of kids that won't read anything but comic books. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
when you see a book that's that thick, most kids are like, "Nope, I don't wanna read that. It doesn't matter what it's about. That's too many pages." Where a comic book, you know what I mean? Even if you get
Yeah.
one of the thick ones, it's pictures, and like you said, if there's the audio to go with it, that makes it so much better. Because I know that was one of the things that got my son was the graphic comic books.
Mhm.
He started reading those, and then we moved into actual novels and books
Right.
and like he started reading some parts of the Bible as well. And I think, like you said, getting them started on something they enjoy that is biblically sound definitely gives them a nice stepping stone to then be able to read the actual version of the Bible, whatever version that is. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, well,
Definitely
and
helps.
I didn't realize this until I started getting really into it. Like, I didn't know that most Bible versions are written to a 10th grade level. Like, I just didn't know that, right? And so, whether you take sort of the old English of the KJV out of it and you look at even modern translation, it doesn't matter. It's all kind of higher level than they can be, and it doesn't mean they can't memorize scripture. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do those things. But as a, "Hey, go read this for 20 minutes," or something like that, we really need to be giving them something that is at their basic reading level,
Right.
so they can build a love for the word and at the level they can understand it, so that as they grow and they want that more, they can
And an
grab
actual
more
understanding of what they're
proper
reading.
version or whatever. Yeah.
Because yeah, that's what I've noticed is like my daughter will come say, "Okay, so I read this Bible verse. What does that word mean?" Well,
Yeah.
again, w- if there's and I've read like we have like a kids version Bible, but
Mhm.
those are almost, you know what I mean, like little kids.
It's graduated, right? And so
Right.
I've got stuff in the portfolio of what I provide that's everything from sort of the 3 to 7 year old really cutesy,
Yeah.
audio for a little child and stuffed animals to put the audio in. And I got this whole thing for really little kids. But I know just from meeting children, especially doing a lot of work with boys at church and in homeschooling co-op and robotics club and stuff like that, boys in that middle grade age, right? Say third to seventh grade, somewhere in that ballpark, they need something different to connect. And really that's, like I said, the comic books and the audio to go with it. Because the other side of it is you've got children that may have undiagnosed dyslexia or dysgraphia kind of things, that putting the audio with it helps them overcome some of that as well.
Right. No, that is very cool. So, we'll just keep going here.
Sure.
So, as far as your classes that are offered, let's see here. Let me
So
pull
I
it
have
up.
creative writing class in 2 sections for older kids, and I'm
Yep.
super excited about it. I've done this. I did this for like the first time I did this class. I did it 2 years in a row for as a like 115, like a small unit every week for 4 weeks at the Wellspring Co-op, and then later I've done it for public schools. I've done it for libraries. I do it a lot. It's basically a 5 unit section where we walk through basic story crafting. There's kind of a worksheet. I talk a little bit about some concepts and say, okay, kids, do a thing. And so that, creative writing 1 and 2, that's really about that. And it's just about helping kids learn to be creative writers. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm a little silly in that class, so they should be good, but not too silly because it's for older kids.
And that
Uh,
was, I was gonna say, that's Saturday at 1 o'clock, and then the second part is at 3 o'clock. And
mhm.
I was gonna say, my son actually took that last year, I think from you,
Okay.
and he came home because he didn't end up coming back to see who won, and that was the big thing. Mom, who won? Who won? Because
Mhm.
I think you had a contest. It was
No,
either
that
you.
wasn't
Okay, there was
that
another
wasn't
one
at
then.
PAX. No,
Okay.
the only thing I've done, I did a class last spring right after the conference at the Leroy Library.
Okay. I was
That's
gonna
where
say,
I did.
because there was two writing ones, and I think he did
Yeah,
all of
that wasn't
them.
me last year. No.
Okay. So, but the other guy, but yeah, he
Yeah.
really enjoyed because
Mhm.
he has gotten into like D&D, and like we
Mhm.
have a whole, our youth group does it. It's at our house all the
Mhm.
time, which is great. I love hosting, but you know what I mean? The creativeness has come out, and helping the story part of it helps a lot. And he is very good at it. And I've encouraged that tremendously. So I'm trying to put my daughter in these for this year, but she's a little less wanting to do it than my son was, but
No, it'll be fun. Like even kids that don't like it, I try to be entertaining. So.
and then the other one is The Weird World of Science by Dr. Fantastic and Beeper.
Mhm. It's what it sounds like. Just gonna be silly. Like we're gonna do some little experiments, some hands-on stuff we've got for the kids, and it's meant for younger kids, and so it should just be fun.
Okay. And that one is Saturday at 10:30.
Mhm.
So those are your three classes. And really the last thing is, do you have a motto or like a phrase or Bible verse, something that you kind of use?
Yeah, so the big thing that I think when it comes to homeschooling, and especially like the gift you have to be a homeschooling parent, right? It, whatever situation God has gifted you to do that, and it's hard. Like I mean, financially, whatever. This is not easy, but it's a gift. And so when I think about it, the important thing, that verse that says, "Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they'll not soon depart from it." I think the important part and the beauty of the homeschooling is the "they" is very specific to that child. And just realizing that as much as you might resonate with a particular program, particular way, a way you think things should go, it doesn't mean that that's the way your child should go. And so you need to take a step back sometimes and go, and I know how hard this is. Like I was traveling for work, but we wanted to have the boys and me do stuff together, or my daughter or whatever. We want to do things together. So we had a lot of, well, the way we're all going on, like we all did karate for one period of time because one child wanted it, we all had to do it, kind of stuff. And over time we matured our thinking into how do we just get very pointy on what our children do. And it's turned out pretty well. One of my kids was really into robotics, and spent time with the little Lego designer, and then got into CAD, and now while he's in college he's a design engineer. Like he's got a professional job while he's still going to school. And my other son, over time was into theater and videos and stuff like that. Now he's running a marketing company. And so it's the kind of thing that if you give your child, if you think about them each as individuals and give them the program for them,
Right.
they will do amazing things that you never expected, just because that's how God wired them.
I was going to say, as much as homeschooling allows for family time, you don't necessarily have to do everything as a family all the time, but it does
Yep.
give you that availability to still do some of that stuff as a family. You know what I mean? A lot more than just being at school. But yes, the individualization that you can give your child, and not only school, but like you said, their hobbies that grow into a job that they can be very successful at, that obviously God gave them the talent to do, that you were able to help develop.
Yeah, I mean, one of the beauties of homeschooling in my mind is there's this book called 10,000 Hours. And it says that if you're going to be an expert at anything, it takes about 10 years or 10,000 hours is what it takes. So the cool thing about homeschooling kids is, and like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and all those big tech people, the thing that made them this, that was the same about all of this, they got to play with the mainframe from the time they were about 11 to 18. Like that's what they did after school. because they were just rarely allowed to do that, right? Like because of their parents or whatever, they had access to something most people didn't have access to. Well, your homeschool child has access to do stuff, right? Whatever it is, whether they like to garden or robots or whatever, they have access to do stuff that a typical kid that's locked in school, in that whole
Yep.
program and thing 9 hours a day, they can't build up 10,000 hours between the age of 10 and 18 where your kids can. And I just think that's amazing. Like the kids I see come out of homeschool starting brand new businesses with 10 years of experience before they even started. It's just amazing.
Yep. Well, and they also get the ability to try more than one thing. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
when you finally get to high school, they're like, "Well, what do you want to do?" Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. I haven't tried anything. You know what I mean? Like my
Yeah.
son has done 12 different, "Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to do that." Well, okay,
Mhm.
so we tried it. I'm not as interested in it, you know what I mean? I tried it, it's not as cool.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the next thing. Where, yeah, like a kid in normal school, pretty much once you pick something, they pretty much shove you down the
Yep.
road. And if you want to switch, that's up to you then to figure it out. And I think that is one of, yeah, you're right. One of the really cool things about homeschooling is finding your passion and then continuing it. And that 10,000 hours can be accomplished very quickly because we have the extra time to donate to it.
Absolutely.
Well, I really appreciate your time and I will let you go and we'll see you at the convention.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.